Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Um, Hello, Moise and Simone. I see a few people already in the chat getting ready to go. If you don't know, I am Reynald Adolphe, and I'll be your host for today. But before we get started, it is Thursday, so let's get things kicked off with our throwback TikTok Thursday segment.
You can use emoji syntax and see the emojis in the Markdown preview with the Markdown emoji extension in VS Code. So let's do an emoji quiz. Each of these lines represent a children's story. For example, this first one is the Three Little Pigs. Can you figure out the rest?
Nice. I love that. Definitely check out our TikTok channel if you are not following us there. We put a lot of good stuff there. And then we also put them on our YouTube shorts. But today's guest is Ania Kubów, and she is a developer and course creator who has worked with a bunch of different companies, like big ones, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and a bunch more. And since 2019, she's been creating some really engaging tutorials on YouTube, as well as some on her website, codewithania.com. She's an expert in JavaScript, React Native, Node.js, and a lot more. But in today's show, it's titled Recursion Algorithm with Minesweeper. So let's bring her on to see what it is all about. Ania.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. And I'm so excited to essentially just get coding with you guys. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, no, we're excited. Like I've always heard about Minesweeper, but I actually, believe it or not, have never played it. So I'm excited to check this out. We got a bunch of people just jumping on right now to join us. Homadia, Sauk, Breton, Ahmad, 4T7. Hello, everyone.
I see Code Stacker. If you haven't checked out Code Stacker also has an amazing YouTube channel. So go check him out.
Nice. Do you notice some of your fans here joining?
I see a lot of familiar names. T. Komowski is one of them. So yes, a few popular names that I am seeing pop up. So yeah, thank you so much for the support, and I hope you're as excited as I am.
Cool. So what do you have in store for us today?
Okay, so what we're going to be building is a game of Minesweeper, but we're not going to be building it just for fun. Of course, it is a fun game. We're actually going to be building it to first off understand the fundamentals of JavaScript better. When people ask, why do you build games? I'm like, because not only do you get a cool game by the end, but actually the learning that you get from them is invaluable. There's a lot of problem solving, a lot of stuff that you get outside of just building a normal website, for example, and it really forces you to kind of push the boundaries of what JavaScript can do. So I always suggest to newbies to code games. Minesweeper is a little bit more on the difficult side, and we also deal with the recursion algorithm. Now, for those of you wondering what that is, recursion is essentially a function that calls itself until it can't anymore, and recursion is the perfect example. Sorry, Minesweeper is the perfect example of recursion because. Should I go ahead and share my screen now, or should we save that? Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you, mainly because of this, right? So for those of you who have not played Minesweeper before, I don't know how old everyone is here today, but Minesweeper is something that I played as a kid. And essentially, you've got 20 little bombs in here, and you have to locate them, right? So you have to go ahead and click on here. So if I click there, okay, I didn't hit on a bomb, but I did click on a square with nothing, and it fanned out. And the reason it fanned out like this is thanks to recursion. We're essentially writing a function to check this square, this square, this square, and fan out. So it'll check this one and all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares around it, but then check the 8 squares around each of these as well. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Yeah, sorry.
So quick question. So before you even start mentioning recursion within Minesweeper, for those of us for the few of us that might not even like have never played it before, what's the goal of the game?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of went on a tangent there. So the goal is to find all the little bombs, and the clues are in these numbers. So if you have a
Okay.
1 here, it means there is one bomb in the vicinity of this square. So it could be here, 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 or it could be here. Obviously, it's not there because we can see what's there. So it's most likely in one of these 3. It's probably in this one because this, we know that 2 bombs are next to this. So if I go again and click here, it was the bomb. So we've lost because we hit a bomb. The goal, yeah. So we've lost, game over. And to kind of guess where the bombs are, you can right click and put a little flag, and then you have 19 flags left. So you win by locating the location of all 20 of the bombs.
Oh, okay. All right.
Have you never played Minesweeper before? I take it. But maybe after this you'll become a huge fan and be like, oh my god, I love Minesweeper, could I play it? I'll be like, yes, if you code the game.
Yeah, and get all addicted again.
Right? How many people in the chat? I can't really see the chat at the moment because I'm just sharing my screen. Out of interest, has everyone heard? Is there anyone who hasn't heard of Minesweeper before?
Okay, let's see. Seems like so far most people that someone said that. Yeah, we all did. Moise is speaking for everyone. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone that said that they have not yet.
That's
Someone
good.
else said, I wasted too much time on Minesweeper as a kid. That was
it is super addictive though, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, even coding this was really fun. Like sometimes I code these games. At the moment I'm also coding chess, which is really exciting. I just get super excited and maybe spend too much time coding them as well as playing them. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
No, I get it. I feel it. I had like some other games that I got like addicted to. But I don't want to date myself and name them. Pac-Man.
Pac-Man's a classic, yes. What about the oh gosh, what was it? I watched the Tetris movie recently. I don't know if people have seen it, but it was on Apple TV. And I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. And it was actually really good. And I learned a lot about the history of Tetris and the licensing issues and how loads of countries are essentially fighting over the rights to Tetris. And it became really, it became really, well, of course, the movie probably over dramatized the actual story a little bit with some, artistic license. But yeah, who knew that the game of Tetris had such an interesting and rich backstory into actually how it kind of came about and got spread to the whole world.
And so it was a movie, not like a documentary. It's kind of like The Social Network was a movie about Facebook's background, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a proper movie.
Okay.
Blockbuster, let's say.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. I like drama, stuff like that. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue with your demo.
For sure. Okay, so luckily all of us know how to play Minesweeper, and hopefully for those who do not, I've just explained the rules of the game. And honestly, it does take a while to kind of get to grips and kind of guess where these little bombs could be. So there's very likely that there's a bomb in, again, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, or this one, or this one. I keep going around because that's essentially what we're going to be doing with code, right? We're going to if we click on this, we're going to add an event listener to this square to then check the square, because all these squares are essentially going to be in one long array. And we're going to use the indexes to find out the index of this square and check it. And then that will essentially fan out. Check this one, fan out. Check this one, fan out. Check this one, fan out. So perhaps when we finish building this, I can even show you this happening if we kind of slow down the movements. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be checking. We're going to be writing a function to check each square until we find a bomb or until we can't go anywhere else. And then the recursion stops and the fan stops. Okay, so once again, let's try click on one with a fan. I just want to make sure that the concept's kind of clear. Oops, okay. It's fine. I'm not very lucky right now. Come on, empty value. Right, maybe this one. Okay, so great. So you will see I clicked here And it checked here, fanned out, checked here, couldn't fan out there, checked here, checked here, checked here. Got a number, so stopped. Got a number, so stopped. But at the same time, it's still fanning out. And that is how the recursion is happening. So without further ado, if maybe I didn't explain that very well, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to carry on to the code. So because we don't really have that long in this tutorial, I've already gone ahead and essentially built out the game, but it doesn't do anything, right? Because we haven't hooked up any event listeners. We have, but we haven't actually got the functions doing anything.
Okay.
So this is what it looks like at the moment. Here is my code. So I'm going to spend maybe like 10 minutes talking through the code until we start actually coding anything, because I think that's also important. For those of you, I just want to make sure that I cover all bases with covering super beginners to more advanced developers. This is the content of my index.html file. We have the title here, which will show up at the browser tab. We've linked up our style sheet. I've also imported some fonts. So we have this like cool, kind of more pixelated font. And then all I've done, I haven't created any squares at all in here. I've literally just created this div with the class of grid. And then we've injected all of these squares. How many is it? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 100 squares with JavaScript. And then I just have a div here, which essentially will inject how many flags we have left here, again with JavaScript, and then show us the results, or essentially show us game over, or we won, or whatever, anything like that. And then, of course, after all the HTML elements have been read, we then go here and we read the app.js script. So everything in here. Okay. So that's literally all. That's it. That's all for my HTML file. Very minimal, because like I said, I want to teach people how to become more fluent in JavaScript, which is why we've done the majority of our work in here. Now, I just want to say this is actually a great game for those of you wanting to enter any game dev jams. I know there's a few coming up. I'm actually going to be not a panelist, a judge on the game dev JavaScript competition, in which lots of games are submitted, and then a bunch of us, the judges, kind of give feedback. But essentially, it's a great opportunity to kind of get involved in that kind of scene. So this game would be perfect because you could use essentially the skeleton structure of this and, like build on it, make your own, maybe apply a twist, maybe, of course, don't have bombs, maybe have something else that you are kind of looking for. So that's just a kind of shout out to anyone looking to get into JavaScript game development, because it is very much a niche, right? Most game development is not done in JavaScript.
Now, is that a pretty popular thing that's going on now in terms of like game competitions for devs? Like how sometimes we have like coding, like hackathons, but now as popular as hackathons, we have like competitions for games, or are game developments in hackathons?
I think it's very niche, JavaScript game development, which is kind of why it's more kind of like indie in a way, like because as I mentioned, most games are not built in. It's very rare that a game that we play today is made in JavaScript. So again, I think it's just for those JavaScript fan girls and fan boys who also want to kind of utilize their skills and create some fun, cool games. So definitely not as popular as hackathons, I would say, but definitely kind of they do exist. And if it's something you haven't heard of before, then I hope I've told you something cool and interesting that you can get involved in. And they haven't paid me to say this, by the way. I'm just telling you because I think it's cool.
Okay, yeah. It's not a sponsor. You actually.
It's not like a spot. Yeah. It's genuine.
It comes from the heart.
It comes from the heart. Okay. So all we have done in this file is picked out the entire grid that I'm going to be injecting JavaScript into. I've also picked out the element with the ID of flags left so that we can actually, show in the browser how many flags we have left. And then we also want to show the result, right? So the same as above. Now, to create the board, I've actually used the width. So I've said that I want my grid to be 10 by 10. And I've used that in order to create a for loop that will essentially create a div. And once I create that div, it will actually give the ID So it'll send attribute of ID. We could have actually done .id equals I as well. That is totally fine. It's the same thing, really. It's, I guess, a preference in which way you want to do it. And then I have actually, after I've given each of the squares an ID, I've actually used this shuffled array to kind of, well, what I did actually was get the bomb amount. So I've said 20. We can actually change this in here to make it harder or easier. And from that number, I created an array, some with empty spaces or valid, or some with bombs. Okay. And then I kind of shuffled it around using this, so that we've got a shuffled array each time. So each time we load this game, I will get an array of essentially 100 items with either valid or bomb in them. So that is kind of cool. And that's why I add to each square as well. So already behind the scenes, if we inspect this, we go in here, go in the grid. See, we give the ID. We also give a class of valid or bomb, and that's been done through the shuffled array. Next, we also gave a data attribute. And why is that? Well, that is essentially, I'm just going to show you, that is done a bit later. Well, actually, let's just talk about it now. So I've essentially gone ahead and checked if a square essentially contains bomb, right? So we're looking in here and saying like, oh, okay, well, this one contains bomb. So I then want to get the square here and add a 1 to it, okay? So we're essentially just saying that if a bomb is here, then we want to add the data 1 here so that the number 1 can be displayed when we click on it. So that's what this code is doing. And it's also accounting to if we're on the left-hand side, right, or the right-hand side, because if we are here, then we don't want, for example, if we're here, then we don't want this square getting a number, right? Because technically, even though it is in the same array and it is next to it in the array, it's actually not next to it visually. So that's why I've accounted for that by essentially defining is left edge and defining is right edge. And this is a great use of the modulus operator for those of you who love maths like me. You don't really use the modulus operator much, really. I don't think I've ever used it outside of creating games. So
I've had to use it once, like.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I remember feeling so smart when I've used it. I'm like, I remember this
right?
modulus. Yes, okay. So, all right.
You're like, finally, I use that thing that I learned at school that I never thought I'd use. But yeah, so anyone watching this who was like, actually, I could kind of need maybe a refresher on modulus, or like I've never used it in a real life project, then again, this is a perfect example for you to use it. In fact, any grid-based game kind of that has this shape, so like Pac-Man, battleships, a lot of them I use modulus for, so do check that out. So great. And after we've done this, we've obviously put the square into the grid. So each time it loops, it puts another square and another square and another square in. And then we add event listeners. So we listen out for clicks on it. We also listen out for right-hand clicks, so we can add an arrow. But I think we are now good. I've explained all the code, and I've just called the function to create that board. And that is where we are at now.
Okay.
So thanks for bearing with me. I just wanted to give that, obviously, I just wanted to talk you through that code because I didn't want to like be messing around with this too much because it's not really kind of the, I guess, the topic that we're going to be covering today, which is recursion.
Right.
So all good. Do we have any questions so far? Have I explained
I've been looking in the
everything well?
chat to see if there's any questions that came up. There was one from Narnia Expert. How many mimes are scattered in the grid? Is it a constant or random number?
So we've hard-coded it, and I've hard-coded it. You can make it random, totally, but I've hard-coded it for this game because I also thought it would be quite cool if you did want to take this game to the next level, right? That maybe there'll be an increase in bomb amount. So you pass 1, it's like, oh, you won, and then it goes, boom, 30, and you can change it, which is why I've kind of also, I guess, assigned this a let. I mean, this could obviously be const. That doesn't change. This could be const because it's an array. This is let because we use that variable and assign its game over true to it at some point. And the flags amounts changes, right?
Here's a good common JavaScript question. What is the triple equal sign?
Yes, the triple equal
This almost
sign.
sounds like a plant, like someone planted this question.
So this means strictly equals, and it takes into account the type. So for example, here, I modulus width, I'm checking that, well, this is a number, right? This is going to be a number because I is a number here, and width I've said is a number here. So this is going to be a number, and I'm checking if it strictly equals the number 0. So this will be true. This will also be true if I did that, right? Because double, so 2 of these, does not take into account the type. So this will be true. However, this will not be true. And why is that? Anyone?
Anyone in the comment wants to answer? I know for like the triple equal sign, that's specifically we're dealing with like numbers, right? And
right, exactly. So that's because it's a string, that will not be true. So yes, we are just checking if it strictly equals, and we're taking into account the data type. But that's a great question. I'm glad that that was asked, because I was happy to explain that for anyone who wasn't really sure.
Yeah, that's a common JavaScript interview question.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely keep that in mind. So great, we've created our board, and now what I'm going to do is write a function. So on click, we are calling a function click, and
Great.
what we are doing is actually passing through the square. And what's the square again? Well, it's the div that I added an ID to, and then I added either valid or bomb class name to it, and then I put it in here. But what I'm also going to do is grab it and put it into the click function. So right now, in fact,
while you do that, I'm going to give you like some function music background.
Okay.
If everyone in the audience, if the music is too loud, just let me know. I'll bring it down, but I'll start it really low so we're not losing our hearing.
That sounds good. So what I'm going to do, yeah, perfect. What I'm going to do is essentially define this function, right? And this function takes the parameter of square. So I'm just going to, I always forget this parameter argument. I did know this, but now I got confused. I think argument, so it's a parameter, and then argument when you kind of reuse the function, but correct me if I'm wrong. I could have got those two the wrong way around. So anyway, we're passing through the parameter. Now I don't even know which one it is, but yes, we're passing that through. So if I console log square, I'm just going to write square so it's really obvious what we are console logging. Okay, so now every time I click on a square, I'm just going to refresh this. Let's get up our console log. It will literally bring back that whole square. So how cool is that? That is so useful for us, because now we have the data. We know that if we clicked on this square, we know that there is one bomb next to here. We also know that this is a valid move, and we also know exactly where in the array. So this is technically an array, right? So it's going from here and it kind of wraps over each other. We are in square 12 of the array that represents all these squares. So great, let's use that information, right, to get the fan to start fanning out and recursion to happen. So I am now going to, well, let's actually just get the ID so we can work with it. So let current ID equal, and I'm going to get the squared ID. So I'm literally just going to get that ID and assign it to current ID so we can use it in a more readable way. Next, what I'm going to do is just say, well, for now, I think let's, let's say that if we click on it, but it is a game over, we actually don't want anything to happen, right? So is game, how do I define up here? Well, then I don't want much to happen. I just want to return, because I don't want to be able, I don't want anything to happen. So we could even move that up here. It's totally up to us. That's probably better, because if it's a game over return, otherwise we get the square ID. And what else do we want to do? Well, I think what we should do is check that if there's a bomb first. So let's get the square again. and I'm going to look at its class list. So if the class list contains the class of bomb, then we know that we essentially, you know, hit a bomb, right? So I'm going to actually call a function called game over, which we are yet to define. So we've accounted for that. What else do we need to account for? Well, I guess if it's not a bomb, I'm just going to do else. We're going to cover everything else. Okay? Great. So what I'm going to do is I want to get the total of all the data points. Yeah, okay, let's get the total of all the data points. So for example, if I click on here, I want to essentially just get this data value, right?
Right.
So I can, let's get the total by getting the square. And I'm going to get attribute this time. Get attribute, and I'm going to look for the attribute of data. So I'm looking in here, I'm getting the attribute of data, so I can get its value, which will be 1. So what should we save this as? Let's just save it as total to show, or total. And then what I'm going to do is say that if there is, or if total does not equal 0, then I want to just say that it's checked. So I'm going to grab the square and we use class list add, and I'm going to actually add a class of checked that I have pre-written. So you can find it in here. It will essentially just give like a darker color, right? Just so we know that it's checked.
Okay.
So we're going to add the class of checked. Also, if total equals the number 1, I want to get the square and add another class list. And add the class list of 1, which I've also created. I've actually done it in CSS because I think I wanted, you know, the color of the text to change. So that's what I've done. This is for the color of the text, not the background color. And I'm going to do the same for all the others. So I think there's up to 4. So let's do 2, 3, 4. Then I want to add the class name of 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I think at the moment, if I click on these, okay, so we are adding the class of checked, and we're also adding 2, 1, 1. So we're adding the classes. However, we're not actually adding any any text, right? So that this color of text can be applied to. So let's work on that next. So to do that, I'm literally just going to use I'm going to grab the square that we are working with and use inner HTML to literally set the total, right? So the total, once again, as a refresher, is whatever is with this data attribute, which is that. So if we save this file, we should, why is that not showing? Let's have a look. Square inner HTML. Total. So that should be adding the text to the inner HTML. Let's have a look at why this is not working. So I'm going to console log the square here. And let's click. Okay, so it's working there. Maybe I just wasn't clicking on the right one. So it's showing now.
Okay.
So we are now getting the inner text to show up. So we're applying the color by the class name, and then we are literally in the inner HTML adding the number right there. So that's what that line has done. Cool. Let's carry on.
Nice.
Okay. And we're just going to return out of it because we don't want to do anything else. So now, right, we have done the function of click. However, we want that to happen on this square, and this square, and this square, and this square, and this square. So now what I'm going to do is write another function. So let's write another function check square to check the surrounding squares. So this check square function is literally going to check one square, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to essentially, so after all of this has finished, the check square function is going to go here. And I am, well, what am I going to pass through? I'm just going to pass through the current ID of the square we are working with, because that's all we really care about. Okay. We could pass through the whole square if we want, but I think that's a bit, we don't really need to do that. So let's go ahead and put that there. So now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to define my left edge and right edge for here. I guess we could have, I'm just going to do it in here, and then we can move it out. Like, of course, we can clean up this code by the end. I'm just trying to get it working for now. So again, we defined our left edge and right edge. And what I'm going to do is now use a set timeout so that we can kind of, you know, give the impression of it fanning out by essentially making the squares check very slowly. Well, not very slowly, it'll be kind of fast, but we're in control of how fast we want that fan to happen. So I'm going to say that I want this to happen every 10 milliseconds. And what do I want to happen? So for those of you who haven't used the set timeout method before, that is its syntax. And essentially it will call this callback function. So it will make this happen after 10 milliseconds. If I change this to more, then obviously that will increase the time until this is invoked. So set timeout. Well, what do I want to do? I want to check that if current ID, so we're now going to be using his left edge and his right edge a lot, because we want to check that the current ID is essentially not in any of these, because this is defined as right edge, right? Any of these square IDs are right edge, and any of these square IDs are left edge. So if I say that current ID is, well, first of all, larger than 0, right? Because it has to start above here. And is not at the left edge, so bang means not. Okay, and this, by the way, for those of you wondering, I'm just comparing two numbers. I'm literally just comparing this number to this, and I'm checking that the current ID, so actually we do need to replace this when we're not looping, so I does not exist, it's not defined. We're getting the current ID and we're checking that modulus width, which is 10, equals 0, because if it does, we know we're at the left edge, and same for is at the right edge. So, okay, so we now are checking if that is a valid move. And if it is, I'm going to go into the squares array, right? So the squares array should be defined. Well, we haven't defined it. We've literally just picked up all the squares. So maybe that is something we need to do. Have we picked up the squares?
The code that you showed us earlier, is that code that we are now going to be replacing, or it's going to be working in conjunction with it?
So we're just building on top of what's already there. We're just adding functionality, because this was just to create the board, and now we're adding functionality and we're making recursion happen, essentially. So that's kind of what that is doing. And I guess, well, I think we need to actually save our squares. So we're saving our squares here. Okay, yeah, so we are saving the squares after essentially we create the squares here in the create board function, and we put them in the grid visually. We then also add that square into an array, and then we save it up here so it's global, and we can use it down here. So we're getting the squares again. And what I'm going to pass through into here, because again, this is an array, I'm going to console log it out in just a minute, so it's really obvious what I am talking about. I'm just going to pass through the current ID that we are working with. However, I'm going to -1 from it, because if we are here, I want to check this square, -1 in the array, right? Because if I click here, this has the ID 2, because we can't start counting from 0, so 0, 1, 2. So I want to check this square, -1. So we want to check the square with the ID -1. ID1, sorry. So now that's what I'm passing through into the array so that we can check this square essentially. I'm just going to make sure it is a number just in case something weird has happened. So I'm going to use parseInt for this and pass that whole thing through just to make sure that it is indeed a number. And now that we have done that, I just want to get that square's ID. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just literally looking for the square on the left's ID, and that code will help me do that. Okay. And once I have done that, I'm actually going to save this as the new ID we want to check.
All right.
And now I'm going to essentially get the document and use query selector and search for, or actually we can do get element by ID because we are working with IDs, get element by ID. And I'm just going to pass through that new ID. And now I'm going to save that as the actual square. So a new square to check. Okay. And when we have that, I'm once again going to pass it through into the click function that we just wrote. So now everything that we wrote up here, okay, will be applied to the square on the left. So let's check it out. So I believe that's all we need to do, and that will happen after 10 milliseconds. Let's go. So now if I click on here, that is not working. Why is that? So check square current ID. Let's do some debugging. So check square. Let's console log it out. Console log the new square. Okay, so that is stopping. Why is it? That's 63. Did that contain, oh, that contained a bomb, that's why. So we're clicking here, then it should go to here. But for some reason it is not. So else we do this. Well, maybe it's because I put a return there. Ah, it's because this is in the wrong place. So we actually want to do that outside of it because we want that to happen no matter what. Or maybe we don't because we want to check bomb. Okay, that should go here. Again. Okay, so that is happening. We are essentially checking the square to the left, as you can see, and it keeps going. Okay, it goes all the way here. So we clicked here, it checks the one on the left, and it continues, right? So actually, I'm going to get rid of one console log. Maybe let's get rid of, let's keep this one. I'm going to get rid of this one just so it's more obvious what we've written. I click here, ta-da! So it checks this one, but it keeps going. Ooh, we don't want that to happen, but at least we've got this working, right? We actually want it to stop if we reach a number or, yeah, we just reach the end of that. So let's maybe work on that next. So we are going to do so actually. So we're going to allow the click to happen. And then when it goes to the click, before it does anything else, we're actually going to check for something else as well. And one thing that we want to check for is that we're going to check for the class of checked, okay? And if it contains checked, we also want to stop. So if square class list contains checked, and actually also if it contains a flag, right, or square class list contains flag, then we just return out of this. We don't want anything else to happen. So now, okay, that stops there. That's a bomb. But now it stops, okay? It kind of stops there because it's checked, and well, there's a bomb there too, so it also stops. Okay, let's try another one. Okay. So it should be stopping after 1. It shouldn't continue. Let's have a look at why that is happening. I think what we can do is essentially continue rather than it going all the way to the left, I think it should continue maybe going around here and checking like so. So maybe let's continue doing that. So we've done for checking the square on the left. Next, maybe let's check the square on the right. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that next. So I'm just going to literally copy all of this and check for the square on the right. So I'm just going to add one this time and then pass that square in to be checked as well. So I'm just going to let's maybe move that out here. And let's just control lock the square here. Cannot read property of ID at line 95. Why is that? Current ID +1. I guess it's running into the edge. So it's checking here, it's checking there. Doesn't like this one. Okay. That's because we need to check for the right edge. So it is right edge. Then we also need to change this because it doesn't matter that we are above 0 on this occasion. What we need to do is check that we are smaller than here. Okay. So sorry, that's my bad. So still not liking that. Why is that? Current ID is smaller than 98 and is not on the right edge. So we go into the squares and look for the current ID +1. And we get that ID. Okay. And then we click the new square. And that is in the set timeout. Maybe let's comment this one out for now and try another one. So I'm just going to copy this. And this time what I'm going to do is check that if we are in a square that's above 9, so we're going to start from this row now, and we're going to check down essentially. So we're going to check that it's above 9 and is not at the right edge. What I'm going to do is get the current ID and I'm going to do +1 minus width. So essentially this time I'm checking from here, I'm going +1 and minus width is essentially here, right?
Okay.
So right here. So we're going down and we're essentially adding a whole width to essentially check this square. So let's check that. Let's give it a go. Okay, it still seems to continue. Let's continue debugging this. So this is half the fun of being a developer, right? You have to figure out why some stuff is not working sometimes.
Yep.
And it does seem to continue out to the left.
There's no bugs at all, then something's wrong. Then it's fake. It's fake coding if there's no bugs.
Right, exactly. This is actually why I kind of tend to do most of my stuff kind of like pre-filmed, because then I can like cut all the boring bits out of me going like, why is this not working?
No, I hear you.
Okay, so it's going all the way out to the edge and then it can't read the ID. Let's have a look here. On the click function again. So we are getting the ID, that is fine. We're then checking if the square contains a checked class and then contains a flag, and if it does, we're returning out of this, and then we're checking if it's a bomb, and if it contains that, well, we're going to write the game over function. So that is fine as well, because you know nothing will really happen there. We're going to write that function later. And then
somebody made a comment. Ahmad Mori made a comment. Minus width or plus width? I'm not sure if he's questioning like.
Minus width. Minus width will take us to this row, right? Because if we are in square with the ID, So for example, this one 14, if we minus the width, which we set as 10, we will be checking square with ID 4, which is this one. So hopefully that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know why at 95 it's not liking the ID. It's not reading the ID here. Because we're going into the squares. Anyway, let's continue debugging this. So I'm just literally walking through the code. So then we're getting the total, and that is fine. If total doesn't equal 0, well, then we kind of do all this other stuff, as in add the class of checked, and then add the numbers to it. So this all looks good. I'm not quite sure why it's not like.
T. Tamoski says declaring.
I know why. I know why, you guys. It's because after we click on a square, we need to add the class of checked to it no matter what. So we should do this regardless. So we clicked on it, it should have checked, and that's what will stop it, right? Because if we check for the class of checked, then we stop this function from running. Okay. Yeah. But what did T. Komorski say?
He wrote declaring new ID twice in the function.
No, that's fine because it's block scoped. So this const will essentially live in here and not affect the one here, right? Because it's block scoped. Whereas if I defined it like here, then that would be a problem.
Yeah, then be more global.
Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, we did it. So now if I click on one of these, let's go ahead and go. Come on, we need an empty one that has a bomb. Great. Bomb, a number. There must be one that's just valid that we can click. It will span all the way out now. How cool is that? And it'll stop if there's a number. So I've done it. That is good. I've stopped it from running. So I'm stopping the recursion from running over and over again, all thanks to this line of code. So we are adding the class of checked to the square so that when we run this function again, this will stop it. It will stop him from running over and over again.
And where's the line where you're calling where the function is calling itself?
So we click on the square, and then if we are okay to click on it, we check the square, which will go here. And then after some time, we go and find the square next to it and call the whole click function again, right? Because we are essentially using it here to pass through the new square that we want to check.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I did say this was a bit on the hard side for anyone who is a beginner, so I totally appreciate it.
I just wanted you to point out like which function where it's actually calling itself, which is like the whole premise of the.
Yeah, of course. So yes, that is how the recursion is happening. We are literally passing through the new square to be checked. We're going to pass through the other square. So at the moment, we have passed through the square on the left. We passed through the square on the right bottom side. So this one right here. I can uncomment this out now. I'm sure it'll be fine. We're also passing through the square. We're also checking the square right here. And then I'm just going to cover all of them before we debug this further, because I'm just very aware of the time we have left. For those of you, obviously, I know this isn't a lot of time. This is a really long tutorial. If you're keen to watch the full thing, it is on my channel, and you can kind of watch the full tutorial as well as get the final code for this if you do want to check that out. So now I'm going to just check that this is, let's just get rid of all of this. Now I'm going to check that if current ID is larger than 10, then I want to essentially just check the square directly above it. So minus width, that was one of the questions. That is me checking the square directly above it and pass that square through to the click function. Next, so that is another one I'm going to do. I'm going to check if the square ID is larger than 11 and is not on the left edge. Well, then I want to get the current ID, and this time I want to look on the square to the left and directly under that one as well. So minus width. Okay.
Nice.
And now I want to check for, the square that is directly to the right. And then let's check the square. Let's do smaller than 90 this time and is not on the left edge. And this time I'm going to check the square that is to the left and directly below that. There's a few more. We need to do 8 of these, right? Because we're checking all 8 squares. This time I'm going to look at the current ID and check that it's smaller than 88 and it's not on the right edge. And this time we are going to get the, oops, what did I do here? This is meant to be minus plus width. And this time we're going to check the square on the right and then directly below that. So I think we just need to do one more. And this time I'm just going to check that it's smaller than 89 and we're going to check directly below it. So yeah, I think that is it. Let's check it out. I'm just going to see how that is looking now. So we need to get it to fan. Okay, it's carrying on there. So we clearly haven't done something correct, but you will see that fan is happening. We just need to debug this a little bit more. So let's do it. So if you want to slow this down again while you are debugging, you can. All you have to do is just, slow it down by making that set timeout perform a little bit slower. Again, why is it so difficult for us to find an empty square? I mean, I can cheat. I don't know why I haven't done this already, but we can inspect, and then we can literally just find it here. So if I click here.
You've got too much morals, that's why.
Right. So all of these seem to have a number. I feel like this is way too many numbers for this game. Okay, there we go. So that had data 0. That is the one we needed to click. And then let's find another one. Okay, great. So that is kind of working. We've obviously done something wrong with the math here. That is something that we're going to have to debug. But you can see the recursion algorithm happening already. I can slow this down even further if we wish. So this is kind of cool because you'll really see it. Find another one with data 0. Is this a good one to click? Should we try? Nah, not a good one. Let's find another one. Oh, here. There's a bunch clustered here. So that has, you will see that going a lot slower. It went from here to here and it stopped. Right? Let's try again. Let's try find a little cluster. So here's a cluster. So there. Slowly checking, right? How cool is that?
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know how much time we have left. I don't know if you want to sit and debug all this math with me, or if you want to maybe switch over to question time and then, check out my tutorial for the debugged version where the math is more correct and we are actually going around and checking all these squares rather than just going to the left.
No, I think we're good because I think the most important part was where you showed where you implemented the recursion, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I'll ask everyone if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments. But it is about our time for our next segment for our lightning round. If you're ready for that,
let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Producer?
Should I stop sharing my screen?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. I'll never do that now. Stop sharing.
All right, producer. All right, so this is our lightning round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you just answer the first answer that comes to your head, okay?
Sounds
Don't
good.
Too hard now, just within 2 seconds.
First thing that comes, yeah.
All right. Your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, man, why is it so hard? Badly named functions.
Nice, okay. Question 2. What's the scariest thing you've ever done for fun?
Oh, do you know what? We went seal snorkeling and we had to jump in the water here in Cape Town and it was like 10 degrees. That was kind of scary. I'm going to go with that.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds scary. Especially for me, I can't swim, barely.
Yeah, well then yeah, extra level of scary.
Yeah. All right.
You upgraded the scary.
Question 3. Is it GIF or is it GIF?
I say it's GIF, but a lot of people disagree. What do you say?
I say GIF.
Yeah, okay, GIF. Team GIF.
Yep, I go with the mass and keep out of trouble. Question 4. What's one VS Code extension you cannot live without?
Oh, I think, do you know what? There's a few. JSON view. I think that one. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
that makes it all nicely laid
And
out, your
readable.
JSON.
Yeah. Yeah, so it just makes JSON files readable rather than just a bunch of like lumped up text. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll go with that.
that's a nice
that
one.
one.
I haven't used that like in a long time, but I do remember that. All right, and your final question, lightning round question. The first guest, if you ever have your own talk show.
I'm gonna say you.
Me? Oh,
If
that's
Elon
the
Musk
best
says
one.
no, if Elon Musk says no, then you've got the call up.
Yeah, I should have had my sound effect working so I could just have all the applause, like yay! All right, so that's the end of our lightning round. So I can't remember if the producer's gonna show that lightning round, and there we go.
Nice.
I'm so glad you came on, Ania. This has been awesome. If folks want to follow you, what is your social media that they should be hopping on to follow you?
Yes, so please do check out my YouTube channel, my Twitter as well. I'm always tweeting, just mainly stuff that's kind of off the top of my head. My YouTube channel, I've got a great video coming out tomorrow on using the OpenAI API to generate images. So please do check that out. We're going to be taking existing images that we have and uploading images. So if you want to learn how to do that in full stack applications, then do watch it, along with obviously using the OpenAI API to generate those images. And then also I do have Instagram, but that's kind of like, it's not very coding related, and GitHub, of course. So
Great.
yeah, thank you for sharing those.
Yeah. Our producer just put up the GitHub, and she just put up your other ones for Twitter and YouTube also. And for us folks, if you are not subscribed, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel if you got some value out of this. And also we have our TikTok at vscode on TikTok. So this has been awesome. Thank you so much for the demo. And I finally now could explain what Minesweeper is to people. And yeah, that's it. See everyone later, okay?
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for watching.
All right, bye. Yay, thanks so much for powering through.